Welcome back to the Mature Male Podcast. I'm your host, Wes, a psychotherapist helping men mature through timeless wisdom and practical guidance. Today's guest is Kenny Mammarella-D'Cruz, known as the Man Whisperer. Kenny is a best-selling author, weekly columnist for the iPaper, and a regular on Times Radio's Man Friday slot. Newsweek describes him as a, quote, gentle voice in the ears of many men who come to him for help with life. A child refugee who navigated PTSD and mental health challenges, conquered OCD while working with dying men alongside Mother Teresa in Calcutta. For over 25 years, he's been working with men's groups, helping men navigate life's deepest challenges. You can learn more about his work at themanwhisperer.co.uk. Kenny, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure so far. And I'm sure the pleasure's going to grow.
Yes, I'm excited to chat with you. And part of referencing the intro I said here, you've overcome some profound personal challenges, OCD, Tourette's, body dysmorphia, and much of your healing happened in a pretty extraordinary context, working with dying men alongside Mother Teresa in Calcutta. That's such a powerful origin story for someone who now guides other men through their own struggles. Can you take us through and into that experience in whatever way you'd like, and how facing death and suffering with those men in Calcutta became a pathway to your own healing?
Death has been a big part of my life for a very long time. And that was just one of the filling stations that broke me down. And I guess for me, I was around death when I was very young, when my family were on the Secret Service death lists, and we heard of people being killed in Africa. So I was born in Uganda, and we were in trouble. We got a phone call one night with someone saying to my father, "We're going to come and kill you tonight." So that's when we went into hiding. We lived quite near Idi Amin. We were very used to hearing gunfire nearby and our home rumbling, moving as tanks went by. So death has been around me, and I've been very interested in it for a very long time, since I was very young. And the whole Mother Teresa thing, to be frank, same as most of the goodness that has happened in my life, is way beyond anything that I've thought or planned. I happen to be living in Fiji. My family's from Goa, even though my parents and I were born in Africa, and we'd never really been to Goa. So I kind of bullied them to meet me in Goa, and to go from one paradise to another costs an absolute fortune, from Fiji to Goa. And I just, as I often think in life, why? What is going on here? What is life trying to tell me? And the little voice just said, go and work with Mother Teresa. And I hadn't been Catholic probably for a decade or three. But it wasn't about that. It's just like following. And I ended up showing up in Calcutta, volunteering to work. Didn't think I was going to work with dying people. I didn't know what the options were. And I opted to work with children, and told that I couldn't, because men aren't trusted to work with children. There had been abuse by men and women, but all the same. So I didn't think twice. It was just normal to work with dying men. And it was a profound experience being with men who were actually comfortable with their passing, lots of them. And I remember it so clearly. I only speak English. Few of them could speak English, but all the same, there was connection and communication and laughter and care, to the extent of one guy forbade the other men to tell me how ill and bad he was, because he's being responsible for my emotions. It was crazy. But there was one incident in particular that killed me. In the mornings, we'd show up, and we would, they'd shower, they'd wash, and we would have a huge kind of cauldron under an open fire, where we'd boil and clean their bedclothes and their night clothes and everything else. And usually I wasn't around it. Usually I'd be with the men, and I'd be, working with them, whatever. But for some reason that day, I was stirring this cauldron with all sorts of gunk in it that had come out of their bodies, and it was just riddled with disease, and it was just shocking. And there was a splash and a drop went in my mouth. And for an OCD, that killed me. And something happened. But even just being there with these guys, I remember one morning, there was a guy, he was a new guy. If they were closer to death, they'd be nearer us, near the door, which happened to be around the corner from the kind of mortuary room. There was this one guy who seemed calm and sane and everything was cool. In the morning, he was found cuddling his new dead friends on the floor. He dragged them out and snuggled. What is going on? But to be around death like that and to have no resources, no training, and just to be in love, probably in the most sacred and important moments of life, was life-changing. And for them to be cared for and have a roof over their head and have food and have other people was luxury for some of them. But yeah, we did some pretty horrendous things. And even though I hadn't been Catholic for many, many years, every morning I would go and have Mass with the Sisters of Mercy, they're called, in Mother Teresa, and sometimes have a chat and hang out with her and stuff. And if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have the strength.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing those stories, though very intense. I sense your presence to those in still showing up despite the novelty and discomfort and actual pain of being in that space, in a way where you didn't react and run or leave or make those situations worse. I'm sure at times you responded less than ideal, but it seems like your ability to hang in there and show up really made a difference. And I'm curious, you mentioned the daily mass and interactions with Mother Teresa were in some ways the life raft that got you through it. What about those interactions and experiences, stabilized you in the midst of all that chaos?
No idea, apart from it was pure instinct. And there was just strength to show up and be together and share silence together and be in a certain frequency, a certain vibe, whatever, together. And it was just a foundation for the day. And then from there, it was like catch the bus, go to work. And then from work, it was go back to the cheap hotel, wash, cry, eat, even if I didn't want to, because everyone said the only thing that we have to protect ourselves from catching whatever it is we might catch is we need to eat, we need to sleep, we need to take care. We didn't know what they had. They didn't know what they had. They were there to die. Some of them got fixed up. It was really weird. I went for 2 years running, a month at a time. And there were some guys who we fixed up and put back out, who then returned a year later. And it was really weird the way it was like I belonged to them. And it was like they'd say, brother, where have you been? It's like, well, sorry, I was absent from work. But there was a very strange familiarity and belonging. But it was just part of the ritual for me to hold myself together, to show up and get on with it. And also to meet the world from a very, very, very different lens to the Western world that I've known. And I was brought up very, very Western. I mean, even in Africa and culturally, because my family are Goan Catholics, we were brought up in a very, very old-fashioned Portuguese kind of culture. So to extend myself to their world and to really know myself in their world, and also in different cultures. When I lived in Fiji and as I traveled around, I really got to know myself and see what needs to be unlearned so I can meet the world with an open heart rather than trickery, clever words, and some sort of a Western hierarchical way to survive and show off. And I really learned to show up rather than show off. And I'd say that's one of the main things that we do in the groups is we really learn to show up and see what's in the way and name it rather than blame it or shame it, and feel it and let it pass.
Well, that just really struck me. And I'd like to talk about that, this cultural crisis we find ourselves in the West among men, which is really not just a lack of healthy challenge, but an idolatry of success and dominance. And I imagine your experience working with those men is the ultimate spiritual path, but it's also the ultimate path to maturity, which is more about detachment, descent, decrease, humbling yourself, being generous with your life, not for what you can gain, but what you have to offer, and having to live in situations that you can't be self reliant in, you can't fix or change, you can't save. And all these things are caught up in the male psyche for many of us present day. And I'm wondering, given your experience growing up in the Western world, going then and having that very transformative time in India, and then now living back in the Western world, how do you bridge that gap? What are some of the lessons, principles, and experiences you're taking with you? Maybe you incorporate them in the men's group through the showing up that a man really needs to implement and understand and take away, but obviously in a way where they don't have to go experience what you necessarily did to have those.
Say the essence of it is caring and sharing and community. And after refugee camps, my family chose to move to a small town in Wales. I didn't realize until only 10, 20 years ago that it was one of the poorest parts of Europe in those days. But we weren't. When someone had lots of apples, the whole street had apples. When we went fishing, the whole street had fish. Whatever was going on, there was caring and sharing. It's changed now. It's not as it was, but it's still there. I moved back to my hometown totally unexpectedly because, I was going to live in Fiji. Then I was going to live in Sydney. And I came back to the UK in 98 to do a project for a couple of years, see all the people I love and say, look, I'm out of here. I didn't leave. Life happened. But it's the caring and sharing. And also, I would say a huge part of it, especially for me, considering the way I was brought up, because I'm the eldest son. I was literally, in a way, taken by the women of my family to be their golden boy, which meant I was elevated. It was supposedly better than the men who were wrong, bad, stupid, and dirty. So I shouldn't be one of the men. I was responsible for their emotions, and I couldn't bear and I dare not risk being criticized or even slightly withdrawn from. So wouldn't call it a gift. It was a bit of a curse. And I learned a lot. I really learned about emotions, the working of maybe the female psyche in a lot of ways. And I was the little boy who needed to be able to fix everything. And I would say, well, fast forward a few decades, I started holding men's groups 28 years ago when I lived in Sydney, and I started men's groups in the UK 25 years ago. But the day we went on lockdown, I started holding online men's groups, and they run every day to date, and they carry on forever, I'd imagine, way after my death. What I really learned, one of the things I really learned during these groups is the way that as men and women are literally locked up together, the way that hardy men can turn into scared little boys as soon as they think they're in trouble. And the way that I learned about female hormones, not just the menstrual cycle, but perimenopause and the moods, and how rather than a male is able to be with a woman with his emotions and with her emotions, it's like the male turns into a scared little boy thinking, I'm in trouble. I need to fix it. I need to redeem myself. What do I need to do so she likes me and loves me? I'm not in trouble anymore. And for me, that was huge. My wife wasn't perimenopausal then. It was new information, and there were a lot of men in trouble. There were men who were suicidal. There was a lot going on during lockdown. And I would say, for me, the difference between a boy and a man is a boy will need to fix and save in order to be safe. So if I'm out of trouble and if I can fix things, then my environment is safe. And that's riddled with fear and survival. And it's also, to an extent, performing. So whoever it is that's being performed to, you take care of my child. I'll be whoever you want me to be. You take care of my child. Where for me, a man can be with a man's emotions. I can take care of my child, and I can be able to meet you wherever you are because I can meet myself. And if I can't meet myself, then that's my limitation on where I can meet other people. And I would say boys, irrespective of age, this has nothing to do with age and everything to do with stage in life. Boys naturally come from fear, reaction, making noise, and competing, where men can come from love, able to respond rather than react, able to collaborate rather than just compete, because it's not about the pecking order, and able to listen rather than just make a noise. And I would say that's a huge thing. And I'd also say one of the tragedies about the way that males are treated is very few people listen to a man or a boy. Very often it's second guessed, or it's limited to what it used to be, or it's fixed, or it's inconvenient, or it's laughed, or whatever it is. And if that's the case, then why should a male talk if no one's listening? And it's so easy to point the finger at men don't talk, men don't this, men don't that. Well, if no one's going to listen, or if I'm going to be second guessed or fixed or ridiculed, then of course not. And it's very rare that boys are safe with boys, because it's all about the banter, it's all about the competition, it's all about the laugh, and it's all about belonging. And I would say the biggest fears that males have, I believe, are a fear of abandonment and a fear of humiliation.
Yeah, I think this is a great track to keep going on. Appreciate you sharing some of the factors that would distinguish someone being a boy and a man. And there is something you explore about that difference between the two that goes deeper, as you said, than age and external achievements. When you are working with men in your groups or in the past, what are some other key markers you see that distinguish someone who's still operating from that boyish consciousness that you mentioned versus someone who's started to step into genuine manhood? You know, a lot of what has got me into this work is realizing many men don't know what it means to be mature. There's no standard, there's no model, and many are aimless. And the irony of it is many want to know, they crave the desire to grow up, they crave the desire to be heard and taken serious and be held accountable and to face their fears, all those things deep down. But I just think there's a lot of wondering without a way. And I'm curious, yeah, if you could just speak to some of those distinguishing factors of how someone would mature from the boy to the manhood.
I guess I smiled with that one, because I kind of thought, do I know how to be mature?
Oh,
And then
trust
what?
me, I question it every day.
And then what crossed my mind is, I don't want to be doing mature, and I don't want to be
Yeah.
doing or performing smart or clever or anything
Yes,
like
that's
that.
right.
And for me, it's more about my being rather than my doing.
Yes.
And it's more about being absolutely, totally authentic right here and right now. And what brings my authenticity, and for me, this is this might be the key of the difference between a boy and a man, is a man includes the feminine side, and the responding and the listening and the feeling. These are more feminine traits. Doesn't make them wrong or bad, but so many blokes are just so selling, I'm all male, aren't I? And it's more a fearful question and a demonstration rather than actually showing up right here and right now in this moment. And as far as the feelings are concerned, my biggest addiction, beyond the obsessive, I would call my obsessive compulsive disorder and the Tourette's and everything else. Yeah, they didn't have names. I'm going to be 61 this year. When I was a kid and all of this was going on this month, they didn't have names. I was just a weird kid, and it was really embarrassing that I was twitching and grunting, and the rest of it I could hide. So I had to unlearn it on my own. I just had to unlearn it because I wanted to be an invisible, normal child. I just wanted to be a boy, not a weirdo, not a freak. I was just sick of it. So the way that I learned to undo it was literally breathing. And I realized that the biggest addiction I had was my thinking, my obsessive compulsive thinking, and fearing and fantasizing and second guessing and fixing my fears and fantasies and feeding the panic. And that's the spell that I needed to break, because my protector was totally in control of my life. And my protector wouldn't allow anything different to what I'd already had, good or bad, because anything more would be a threat and out of control. The name of the game with inner protectors, I have found in the decades that I've worked with different parts of people, is control and survival. So I needed to learn to shift that. And the way that I did that, and I also realized that it wasn't just my thinking, my body was addicted to feeling fear. And I needed to break that spell too, because I would pretend to know what's stuffing me up or what's wrong or what's bad and that I'm in control of it because I know it. Of course, I'm not in control of life, but I needed to pretend in order to pretend to be in control and take off. So I had to learn to breathe, and I had to learn to adjust, and I had to learn to bring the man in me present to take care of my child. So the man in me can not only meet the world, but have boundaries. Never had boundaries in my life. I believed it was what bad, rude, nasty people did to push people away. Quite the opposite. It was the scary, intimate place. Thank God for the scary, intimate place, because this is where I can now meet people. And once we've met at good boundaries, then we can stop the merry dance of life, because the boundaries are going to keep changing. Well, I'm going to keep changing. People are going to keep growing. And this is where communication comes in. And what we do in the groups, one of the very, very simple tools that we use is, it's all about feeling. It's all about feeling. And if I can feel my feelings, then I can heal my feelings. Can't think my way through much at all. But then I need to be safe enough to feel my feelings. And it really happened in the group today, for example, the places that we went with, in my breakout room, with sadness and grief and stuff that people were feeling and were safe enough to move into and to be with. And there's another aspect. It's not just feeling the feelings, but rather than making the situation in hand the enemy and the thing that needs fixing, it's like breathe into the feeling and feel the feeling and follow the feeling back. And 99.9% of the time I've witnessed people know exactly where it takes them back in a split second. And that's the part that they need to be with. Rather than, my God, things are bad. It's like, I wonder what life's offering me as an opportunity to meet myself in the dark shadow. So that can shift and it can open up the gold shadow of what might be and who I might be.
Yeah, you're touching on a lot of points that are resonating, and I feel like we're in a session right now. You really are whispering. It's I'm just really struck by the prominence of fear in a man's life. And I think about my own life. My dad passed when I was 11, and I have a lot of trauma of abandonment. And I would never have associated with fear as much growing up as I did loneliness. But, anxiety is let's say, a sub emotion of fear if we're going to categorize it. And I find myself present day trying to self soothe through certainty and control in the everyday moments, with my wife trying to say, why didn't you do this? You need to do that. What are we going to do about this? On the control side, to the certainty to, if something changes, I lose it. It's like, I'm like the Tin Man. I am not flexible. I'm like, we are changing, not good, and it's it's all this suppression. And I love what you said. If you feel, you can heal. I have this concept about emotions being like a floaty in a pool. So essentially, if you push down on a floaty really hard, it pops up sporadically. And that's many men's emotions. They just suppress. They try to keep it down, but eventually it's going to explode in some form or fashion, right? It's important to be in control of your emotion. You still need to get on the floaty. You need to push down a little, but you're on top of it. It's not on top of you. And you have to change your relationship to it, not to suppress it, or what Carl Jung say, if you suppress the shadow, it only manifests itself more, but you learn to love and integrate it, and work with it more than it is deny it and avoid it.
Spot on with the loneliness and the isolation. I feel this is the big tragedy with men these days. Profound loneliness. In the old days, males would turn to males, whether it's boys turning to their friends or having fathers, uncles, communities, men turning to their neighbors, to people at church or people in the street or whatever it is. Where these days, people seem to generally turn to the internet, and then it gets messy. And the internet is there to tell me what's wrong with me and what I need to do and how I need to think and what I need to spend and who I need to pretend to be to hope to be better and okay. And it's a hoax. It's a very dangerous hoax. And I guess these days it's just part of the pathway for so many people. They'll go through the Andrew Tate phase or the pickup artist phase or the find a guru or a podcast hero or whatever it is. Instagram will find me a woman and give me enlightenment phase. It's all, am I allowed to say bollocks here? It's all bollocks.
Well, you can mostly say it because as an American, we just think that's a strange word, but yeah, you can say it.
And also, it's not just having company, but it's about being met. And it's not about holding on to finally there's someone who's met me. Who do I need to be so this person doesn't abandon me and get enmeshed? It's about every moment. And it's exactly what you said earlier. Choice of how to respond to every moment and every situation right here and right now. It's not going to be a fix forever. It's right here and right now. How do I choose to respond to this? What's life trying to tell me? Where do I need to go? And am I safe enough to go there? And a lot of the men today in my breakout room, it's like, well, the family's not there. The friends aren't there. The therapist isn't there. No one's actually been there. And to an extent, it was, and here we are. Because now we're going there. And we're going there because we're in it together. Non-clinical, non-hierarchical, unconditional, very present. And because we're in it together and we're talking about it rather than performing it or avoiding it or intellectualizing it, then it was like slowly, gently moving in, pennies dropping, realizations coming, and life being given a chance to flourish, to develop as things shift and shift out the way.
Yeah, I'm glad you spoke to the loneliness and what the US Surgeon General is called a crisis, which I definitely agree that the internet is bollocks. And I
What
just
a
love the
funny
word.
way to pronounce bollocks.
Well,
I love it in your accent,
yeah, that's the American South coming out, you know?
right? There's a lot of goodness in it. There's a lot of goodness in everything. It's just
Yes,
knowing where to draw the line and not giving away the power to
that's right.
the outside or the inside, including the inner critic.
100%. I will say on that, it takes an inner knowing of who you are to have that compass. If you don't have a true sense of who you are, your values, your personhood, your boundaries, boundaries show what's in and what's out, what's appropriate and what's not. And if you do not have a clear sense of who you are, your decisions will reflect that. Essentially, you'll live reactive because all you can identify with are whatever external experiences you are participating in instead of having this inner knowing that then informs how and what external experiences you participate in. And it's, you need that grounded sense of knowing. And of course, that's ever evolving. It's not like it ever completes itself. But I do think you reach this sense of confidence and assurance. I wouldn't even say certainty of just knowing, hey, this is kind of who I am in the world. This is what it looks like, and this is what it means to express that, shadows and all. And, speaking of shadows, you talk about the toxic masculinity. You mentioned Andrew Tate and toxic femininity, which feels more like a nuanced conversation than what we usually hear in the cultural discourse in a good way. And most people focus on one or the other, but you're really looking at both sides of this dynamic, which I appreciate. What do you see as the shadow expressions of both masculine and feminine energy, and how do they feed off each other in a way that keeps us stuck?
I think the first thing to say to that is it's got nothing to do with male and female, because I was a master at toxic femininity, because nice people are passive aggressive, abandoning, criticizing, liars and betrayers. It's what nice people do. When nasty people will shout and yell, maybe get aggressive. And, in a nutshell, the difference between the masculine and the feminine is the masculine is out and loud, where the feminine is in and to an extent soft or quiet. And I would say most men I know would rather a good shouting to know where they are and what's going on and to meet it rather than being withdrawn from or abandoned or humiliated or criticized. And that can get a man to crumble in a second. It's shocking how powerful it is and how little this is discussed. And especially with boys. Boys have got loads of energy, testosterone running around making a noise, which can be inconvenient for adults who are trying to do whatever it is they're trying to do, like why have the kids in the first place? That's another story. But how to control a free-spirited boy, humiliate it to death, abandon it. It's cruel and it leaves scars forever. And that's what needs healing. That's what needs meeting. And I don't know about over there, but I work with a lot of people who've been to boarding school. And I work with a lot of corporate boardroom staff. Generally, I'm meeting 8-year-old boys who were sent to boarding school and abandoned. And if I can meet them where they are, if I can meet their hearts, then we can really communicate and get things shifting. But if we pretend to be intellectual and smart and clever and who they're supposed to be and what they're supposed, it's just not going anywhere. It's an empty performance. And the whole finding out who you are, who am I really? I kind of gave up on pretending to be whoever it was, my latest iteration that I would buy and then sell to other people and hope to not be found out, because this is my new survival strategy. Don't be rude enough to challenge it. And I thought, bollocks to that. I'm saying a lot of bollocks today. Sorry about that. It's like bollocks to that. I'll take the easy way out and the more efficient and true and practical way out. And for me, that was letting go of who I'm not. More than that, letting go of who I no longer need to be. And who I needed to be was a surviving little boy to please everyone so I can be safe. I needed to take care of that boy, let go of that fearful behavior and be safe enough in myself in this moment to meet you, to meet the world and to show up. And I would rather be the leftovers than some cheap act. And being the leftovers gives me space to change and grow and not have to stick to that nonsense, not have to keep leaving myself out of my life.
Yeah, and I think what you're getting at beneath all of that is this sense of full acceptance of the person that you are. Without, it doesn't mean you're enabling saying that, oh yeah, I'm signing off that this is the best version of me, but I at least have to start with this is who I am, an acceptance of that, but it's also a love of that person and a value of that person. And how many of us men are living out of that insecurity? And if you really drop down beneath all the layers, I think both of us would say this in our work, is it's answering this question: do I really believe I'm worthy as a person? Do I believe that I'm loved? And that all goes back to the boyhood. You know, I always say in order to grow up, you have to go back. You have to go back to the boyhood, because you can try to go around it. You can try, as you've said, to intellectualize it and all these escape mechanisms. But at the end of the day, especially if you've had any sort of trauma, you have to go back and embrace and love and cherish that little boy, give him what he needed in a way that's appropriate and integrated to present day you. Because as you said earlier with the protector part, that little boy is a person within you. You know, I kind of see it like the Russian dolls. You know, there's all these small little versions of you that are encapsulated in the present. And I don't think we can talk about this enough, this need to go back. But many men just think, well, it doesn't make sense. Why would I need to address the past? Why would I need to try to imagine what that little boy needed? And in those questions, you see the very obvious disconnect that they started having from who they are in boyhood.
Yeah.
That's when they stopped imagining and caring and loving and hugging and embracing and being wild. And then you see this disassociation. And it takes this returning back to the boyhood in a really real way, psychologically and emotionally and spiritually, to heal and to take him with you as an informer of who you are today and how to live life.
I love the way you put that. Two things crossed my mind and they were quite huge for me, following on from what you just said. And that was, world will treat me only as well as I treat myself, including in my mind. And I know how much I wanted to kill my inner child because he was a pain in the ass and I was too busy surviving. And I can't be bothered with any of that nonsense. That's just for stupid people with nothing better to do. And that was a survival panic. No space for anything like that. I had no idea. Absolutely no idea. And then when I kind of realized just how wrong and bad and harmful that was to me, and to an extent for him, which is to me anyway, it's like, oh my God, now what do I do? Do I need to dress up like a child and go to Disneyland and take him out and be like some of those weird people that I've seen doing inner child stuff? It's like, oh, how do I make it up? I'll explain it, then he'll understand, then he'll forgive me, then it'll be okay. And then, to be honest, forget about him. My life will be better. And that's what it's about, because I'm stuffed and I need something to work here. And then I realized that this is so beyond words and stories. Again, it's in this moment. Am I going to come from love right now? Or am I going to come from fear right now? Am I going to accept him and accept myself and really connect with myself and connect with love and connect with life right now? Or am I going to go off fearing and fantasizing and fixing the future? And it was a turnaround. And my thinking, I had to admit to myself, never fixed a thing. My presence and the frequency I put out into the world, into the universe, as I come in alignment with myself to the world, has attracted the most profound people, situations, opportunities, love, life, adventures, purpose, the lot. Being present and noticing what life is putting in front of me and following the signs and resisting the temptation so I can work with life rather than make it the enemy and survive it. And then later on, it's like, what is it with all this critical stuff that's just eating my head away? It's rude, it's bad, and I'd never treat anyone in the world like that. And it took me years. I only got it about a couple of years ago. It's like, my God, how much swearing am I allowed to do, by the way?
Go ahead
Cool.
as much as you want.
And I just thought, oh my God, the reason my inner critic is fucking me up is to prepare me for being fucked up. So if I'm pre-fucked up, then I'm ready to be fucked up and I can survive it. And then I needed to update my inner critic, like, same as my protector. That was then. That war is over. It doesn't have to happen anymore. And as the man in me breathed myself as a habit, present and connected here and now all the time. And if it's not all the time, then of course my protector is going to take over, because he's not going to leave an abandoned child. The reason he showed up and he took over is because there was a vulnerable child without an adult to take care. So of course my protector is going to take over. It's up to me, for the man in me, to be present, and the man in me to listen to my protector and to help him inform me grow, rather than making growth the enemy because it's out of control. And I went through a little stage as I, should I be embarrassed? Probably. I went through a little stage as I changed my relationship with my inner critic. It's like, okay, if you're going to give me this shit, then do it like a drag queen. And it was much more available for me to receive and listen to, rather than just crumble under it. Same information. But it turned into information that I could use and choose how to respond to the world. Thankfully, my inner critic's no longer a drag queen. We've done that phase, but it was fun. And it was the way to meet this kind of like beast that was just, fucking me up, basically. But on my side, all my parts are on my side. Life is on my side. Pain is on my side. The shit that can happen in daily life is on my side if I'm willing to be here and now and meet it and listen to it and choose how to respond to it.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I love that analogy. And it reminds me to use different language of how the word personality comes from the word persona, which in the Greek means mask, and how we naturally have to project someone to the world. And that's not a bad thing. We have to have something to work with, right? But I think what you're getting at is we default to the inner critic being the permanent expression of who we are, and we never question it. And it's like having something in your teeth so close you don't realize that you need to take care of it, and you have to create some separation from some distance to give it less power, less authority in your life to then reframe and process, well, maybe what is a different way to live? And like you said, life is not out to get me. But I think there's a lot of messages nowadays that men feel under attack and that people respond to that feeling with, well, get over it. Poor you. You've done enough attacking. Societally, you've had too much dominance and success, all these things. And I think both sides are missing the mark where essentially it's dropping down beneath all of the cultural societal stuff and just saying there is a scared little boy in there who couldn't have possibly got it right. You can't do anything right out of fear. And so, of course, that's how you're going to act in the world. That's how you're going to condition. And it requires a detaching from that to heal it, to then realize, oh, I've criticized myself for 20 years and it's not working. Maybe I should try something else, like
Yeah.
maybe there's something different here that's a more loving, gentle way that sees life in a redemptive manner, which ultimately I think what you're getting at is seeing yourself as redemptive. I'm worth redeeming. I'm worth seeing that I'm on my side. I'm worth seeing a better life happen that doesn't just see the worst in me, but accepts the worst in me in a way that allows me to be less worse and live more and more into the goodness of who I was made to be as a man.
Spot on. And I feel I came up with another cheap line: from fearful masculine to authentic masculine. And in a way, quite simply, that was the journey. And what was really interesting for me was to listen to the voices, the tones, and the person behind my inner critic, behind my protector. In my childhood, in my life, who was that? Where did I learn that from? And that was telling. And it's not to blame anyone. It could be my father, my mother, it could be the Roman Catholic Church, it could be a teacher, it could be whoever. And I can't blame anyone for not being enlightened before meeting me. They can only share what they've got. So I inherited other people's stuff, and it's up to me what I do with it. And I'd rather break the spell and live a good life and pass that on. Not easy though. And what's really surprised me over the many decades of doing this work is how deeply ingrained it is, especially with males, that being better than their fathers or being different to their families or their communities, even if it didn't work, was like betrayal. And also the need for the father or the authority or whatever to be superior, because then there's a safety and I have someone to look up to. And not everyone actually has someone to look up to. And my God, males are looking for it. And I would say something that I find quite uncomfortable that's going on in the men's space, so to speak, is people being drawn to other people who have exactly the same unresolved issues and making a meal in the personality of those issues and being angry or victims or whatever with it. And I totally accept it and I totally respect it, because same as the tapes and the PUAs and the everything else, it's part of the journey.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And I think what you were getting at in the need for a man to subject himself to his father, I think the main point there is that many fathers were critical. They led with, you could do better, you could do more, you're not doing it right. That internalized shame has carried generation to generation, and that becomes the authority. So now the criticism that's coming from the father, primary caregiver growing up, whether you like it or not, I always say how a parent loves you is how you know love. Even if it was shitty in a broken version, that's how you're going to internalize it. And the father figure usually being the first one a man looks up to, feeling that even though deep down his heart of hearts, he knows this isn't right. I shouldn't be treated like this. We shouldn't be interacting like this. Like you said, there's this internalized indebtment to say, yeah, but I feel like I have to subject myself to it in a way where it wrongfully honors the criticism. And then you take the baton and you continue that instead of saying, you know what, my father provided, he was there for me. Could he have been better? Absolutely. But the acknowledgement of where he fell short isn't the disclaimer of being disloyal. And it's not saying now I can't honor him for what he played, the role he played in my life, but I surely must see it fell well short of what I needed. And how can I self source and find ways to give myself that in a way that doesn't return the favor of criticism onto him and blame onto him as well as those around me, which is what you're getting at. You cannot take the blame that someone put on you and just project it and do it onto others. You have to see it for what it is and for what it isn't, love it, but then let it go and say, this is not a helpful way to live. Even though it feels meaningful, I have to detach the meaning and realize that I must move on in love, acceptance, and non judgment.
And old-fashioned parenting was critical. Modern parenting is descriptive praise. Could it be simpler? And good boundaries and communication. But that's the way it was. It's the best they knew. It's the best they had. It's what they had. And it's only just crossed my mind now. But the way that some men and boys really need accountability and to be paced and to be coached and stuff like that. And then the way that some of them will play out and they'll fail and they'll feel bad and they'll succeed and they'll need a big hooray. It's almost like a continuation of that, of like me, reject me, criticize me, rather than, what I loved when I was younger in my first business, which was marketing and publicity. And we had designers and art workers and printers and PR people and whatever it was. And it was boys on a mission. And sometimes we'd be up all night and we'd be dedicated and it was a buzz and we were in it together and we'd get the newspaper. I used to do like world tours of, big pop stars and stuff. And I remember we did James Brown's tour brochure and we were up all night with very limited pictures and we had to quickly write the spiel and translate it in 2 or 3 languages and get it to the printers on time. And it's like, what a buzz. It was amazing. But, is it around these days in that way? It's great to have that with each other.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You mentioned this earlier, the lack of in-person connection. And I'm so thankful that people like yourself are realizing that so much of the solve or solution and healing balm for the male crisis that we're in is simply getting together and to use your language to show up. And for any guy listening, if you don't know where to start, just show up. Show up in your relationship if you're in one, to your family, to your job, to your health, to your spiritual life. And by doing that more and more and being present, as Kenny was mentioning earlier, you will find yourself realizing who you are and not, and desiring to move towards living more out of that authentic, loving place that is present in all things, from the pain and suffering of dying men in Calcutta to the island of Fiji sipping a Mai Tai. And, I think all of this is held in tension to just really come down to those core principles. So Kenny, I had some more for you, but we went with it and the magic happened. So we'll have to have you on again for round 2. And I'm just curious, outside of your website, which we'll put in the show notes, what are some things you'd like to highlight for guys to be involved in or check out?
The strap line we have for the men's groups is we hang out, we get, what is it? Hang out, be heard and get real. And hanging out, it's not just a waste of time and you don't need drink, drugs or shenanigans. It's like connecting. I hang out in the forest with my friends more than anything. And I guess my own strap line for the groups is I am one and I am one of, and other people can only accept me as much as I accept myself. And that's not my acts. That's who I am. And I love that I've been training people. We've got another training thing coming up in September, but I train people to use the tools, hold groups, communicate with men, etc., etc. Life's peachy, but my God, it was tough at times.
Yeah, well said, especially because peaches are mainly from the South. So I love that little ode you gave to me. And I'll be thinking and questioning how to say bullocks all day because I've very obviously never heard that word before. But yeah, no, Kenny, thank you for your time and thank you for sharing about what you're up to and helping for the good of men. So we'll put all that in the show notes. And guys, until next time.
Thank you.